following episode depicts acts of violence and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Does Worcester have a serial killer? That's what residents were asking Worcester Police in early 1993. From December 1992 to February 1993, 4 women were killed. They'd all been strangled to death. On February 4th, 1993, the bodies of 2 of these women were discovered just a few miles apart and within 20 minutes of each other. Police say the bodies of 23-year-old Sonia Blanco and 25-year-old Evelyn Cruz, known as prostitutes in Worcester, were both dumped in the streets from a vehicle. Toxicology reports indicate both women were on drugs at the time of their deaths. Their bodies were covered in bruises. 30 years later, the murders of Sonia Blanco and Evelyn Cruz remain unsolved.
Unsolved Worcester is brought to you by the following sponsors. Follow the crowd through the doors of Donut Homies and say hi to Haley Noel, the donut queen of Worcester's Canal District. This month, the specialty donut shop features special flavors like strawberry shortcake and champagne glaze. Donut Homies is open inside the Worcester Public Market at 160 Green Street every Wednesday through Sunday at 11 a.m. Online ordering with delivery and pickup options is available at donuthomies.com. Follow Donut Homies on Facebook and Instagram for monthly menu drops, specials, and more. Donut Homies, everything sweeter with the homies.
Welcome to Unsolved Worcester. I'm your host, Dan Yeager. Today's episode is part 1 of a 2-part episode special on the murders of Sonia Blanco and Evelyn Cruz on February 4th, 1993. In part 1, we will explore the lives of Sonia and Evelyn, the circumstances surrounding their deaths, and the response from the Worcester community. Come back on Tuesday for part 2 when we look at possible suspects in their murders and we look at how the murders of Sonia and Evelyn are connected to the murders of several other women in Worcester around the same time. Unsolved Worcester will take a deep dive every Tuesday and Thursday into the unsolved murders and missing persons cases under investigation by the Worcester Police Department's Detective Unit. We will be looking to the past to unsolved murders as far back as the early 1950s and 60s. The approach to Unsolved Worcester is this: shine a light on each of these cases, put a life behind each victim's name, and provide a timeline of events and important details, and ask the questions that still need to be answered. Our goal is to remind residents of the Worcester area, both past and present, that there are dozens of unsolved homicides and missing persons cases that need resolution. We hope we can be the spark needed to solve a case. It's just before 6:30 a.m. on February 4th, 1993. The body of Sonia Blanco is hunched over and face down in the street off the curb in front of 27 Dick Street, a multi-family home near Ashland Street and in view of Elm Park Community School. Witnesses tell reporters Sonia had 2 black eyes and her face was severely bruised. It's still very early in the morning, but Worcester police officers are already canvassing the neighborhood and knocking on doors, hoping one of the neighbors saw what happened to Sonia and can shed some light on her death. Less than a mile and a half away, around 6:45 a.m., the body of Evelyn Cruz is discovered on Summit Street, a dirt road running parallel to Green Street in Worcester's Canal District between Ash Street and Plymouth Street. 30 years later, Summit Street is the focal point of the fan experience at Polar Park, home of the Worcester Red Sox. The road runs behind center and left field of the ballpark and features local vendors and the Sherwood Diner car and a mural celebrating the Canal District. But in 1993, Summit Street was surrounded by the Wyman Gordon factory. It wasn't a welcome place, and it certainly wasn't attracting any crowds. The morning after Evelyn's body was discovered, a business owner from nearby Gold Street told the Telegram and Gazette that Summit Street was typically used by shopping cart-wielding homeless men. He said no one goes up there because there's nothing there. It would be a good place to dump a body. Just over a week after the bodies of Sonia and Evelyn were discovered, the medical examiner ruled Sonia's death as a homicide. She had blunt force trauma to her neck. According to a report, toxicology results showed morphine and cocaine in Sonia's body. It would be 3 weeks later before an autopsy concluded that Evelyn's death was also a homicide. Her body had cocaine and heroin in its system. But like Sonia, Evelyn had been strangled to death. Police believe both women were killed somewhere other than where their bodies were found. The women were killed, and then their bodies were later dumped in the street from a vehicle. However, a lack of evidence at each scene where the women's bodies were discovered hampered any investigation by Worcester Police. Both women were fully clothed when their bodies were found, and the medical examiner's report indicates there were no signs of sexual assault or rape. Police initially believed that Evelyn Cruz died from a drug overdose. Her body was riddled with cocaine and heroin. When Evelyn's family found out she had died, they were unfortunately not surprised. Evelyn's brother told the Telegram and Gazette their family had tried for several years to provide Evelyn with help. They knew she was a prostitute and had a significant drug problem. They also told the TNG that Evelyn was HIV positive. Evelyn was a mother of 3 children, a son and 2 daughters. Her brother told the TNG Evelyn was a good mother when she was off drugs. Originally from New York City, Evelyn had lived in Worcester for years. Her last known address was 241 Lincoln Street, a multifamily apartment building above a strip of small storefronts at the corner of McKinley Road and across the street from St. Bernard's Church. Evelyn was laid to rest at Hope Cemetery. Sonia Blanco's last known address was 76.5 Providence Street, a small building sitting next to a classic Vernon Hill 3-decker. The building is now owned by Worcester Academy and is directly across the street from the Providence Street entrance to the school. In the years before her murder, like Evelyn, Sonia was arrested multiple times on drug and prostitution charges. Her body was discovered on Dix Street. She was covered in severe bruises. Toxicology reports indicate she was also on drugs when she was killed. Unfortunately, there is considerably less public information on Sonia than there is for Evelyn. Although police say it's unlikely, it's unclear if Sonia and Evelyn knew each other or worked the same streets. It's also unclear whether they were together when they were killed, and if their bodies were dumped from the same vehicle. Nevertheless, the pair of young women will forever be connected. In May 1993, police told reporters they didn't have any new leads and were skeptical they would ever find who killed Sonia and Evelyn. If the circumstances around the murders of Sonia Blanco and Evelyn Cruz sound eerily familiar to a few other unsolved murders we covered already on Unsolved Worcester, we would have to agree. As we've mentioned in previous episodes, there are many similar connections to several of the cases we've covered in Season 1 and 2, and in stories we will tell in future seasons. We ended Season 1 of Unsolved Worcester with a two-part episode special on the June 5th, 1989 murder of 17-year-old North High School senior Nereda Melendez. Like Evelyn and Sonia, Nereda was strangled to death. Her body was dumped in the woods south of Bell Pond in Chandler Hill Park. Police believe Nereda was killed somewhere else, maybe in a vehicle, and then her body was carried into the woods to be discovered by her family the next day. And let's not forget, 25 years before Evelyn and Sonia's bodies were discovered, the bodies of 21-year-old Sarah Cox and 17-year-old Phyllis Ann Morissette. We share Sarah and Phyllis Ann's stories in episodes 1 and 2 of Season 2. The young women had been strangled to death. In December 1967, Sarah's body was dumped in a wooded area on the side of the road of Granite Street. 6 months later, Phyllis Ann's body was discovered face down and floating in Geese Pond on Vernon Hill. More than 2 decades later, Evelyn, Sonia, and 3 other women faced similar fates. On May 13, 1993, community members, including the city's advisory committee on the status of women, rallied together to plant a crabapple tree at the University Park in memory of Sonia and Evelyn, and the 3 other women killed within a 6-month period between the fall of 1992 and the winter of 1993. The other women were Paulette Barbara Andrea, who was strangled to death in Crompton Park in September 1992, walking home from Barney Google's, a bar in Worcester's Green Island neighborhood. Denise Como, whose burned body was found in a boarded-up house on Austin Street in December 1992. An autopsy revealed she had been strangled to death, and then her killer set her corpse on fire. And Vicky Jennifer Lettinen, found strangled to death in a basement on Pleasant Street in early January 1993, less than a month before the bodies of Sonia and Evelyn were discovered. We will share Paulette's, Denise's, and Vicky's stories in Season 4 of Unsolved Worcester. In 1997, the Advisory Committee on the Status of Women had a plaque made to be placed at University Park about 500 yards down Crystal Street near the corner of Main Street. The plaque read, "In memory of women victims of violence." Unfortunately, today, it's likely the plaque is no longer at the park. We did our due diligence in exploring the grounds of University Park in search of the plaque, only to come up empty. It's been suggested to us that during walkway renovations near the area of the pond at University Park, the plaque may have been removed and never replaced. Similarly, the tree planted in 1993 didn't have any obvious marker that we could find in the park. Unsolved Worcester has offered to provide the funds necessary for a new plaque to be made and placed at the park in memory of these women, as well as an additional plaque or marker for Sonia, Evelyn, and the 3 other women memorialized in 1993, if we can find the tree planted in their memory. If the city or community organizations are unable to locate the tree planted in 1993, we offer to plant a new tree in its place. We hope we can provide an update in the coming months. Not only will we share Paulette Andrea, Denise Como, and Vicky Lettinen's stories in Season 4 of Unsolved Worcester, but we will start the season with a 2-part episode special on the unsolved murder of Patricia Gagne. Patricia was also memorialized near University Park. A memorial plaque was placed at the corner of Illinois Street and Grand Street, just a block away from the park. However, we are also unable to find Patricia's plaque. There are new developments going up on Grand Street, and we expect the plaque was moved prior to construction. We have also offered to pay for a new plaque for Patricia. We hope by the start of Season 4 we can provide a positive update on Patricia's plaque, the memorial tree for Sonia, Evelyn, Paulette, Denise, and Vicky, and the plaque placed in honor of all women victims of murder in Worcester. Thank you for listening. I'm Dan Yeager. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please consider clicking the like button for us. And if you subscribe, the next episodes will show up in your feed. Click the bell on the right and you'll get a notification of when the next episode is ready. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, please leave them in the comments below. We do read them all and respond to as many as we can. Anyone with information about the murders of Sonia Blanco or Evelyn Cruz are asked to contact the Worcester Police Detective Bureau at 508-799-8651 or send an anonymous text to 274-637. Write TIP-WPD and your message, or send an anonymous web-based message at worcesterma.gov/police. Come back on Tuesday as Season 2 of Unsolved Worcester continues with Part 2 of our episode special on the unsolved murders of Sonia Blanco and Evelyn Cruz on February 4th, 1993. Be sure to visit Unsolved Worcester on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Unsolved Worcester. Listen to all episodes for free at unsolvedworcester.com. and podcast streaming platforms including Spotify, iTunes, and more. Special thanks to Worcester Public Library, the Worcester Police Department, the City of Worcester, Ron Scott at New England Sky Picks, and our sponsors for making this possible. The Unsolved Worcester podcast music is provided by Tom Lebelzik of the Worcester Jazz Collective. This episode of Unsolved Worcester is written and produced by Pat Sargent. Drone footage provided by New England Sky Picks. Videography and editing by Colin Turner. Victim images are courtesy of the Worcester Police Department. Sponsorship information announcer Chandler Walsh. Be sure to check out the video for this episode with exclusive aerial views and more on our Unsolved Worcester YouTube page. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Don't miss another episode. Click the notification button to get alerts when new episodes of Unsolved Worcester drop. This program is supported in part by a grant from the Worcester Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts. To find out more about how National Endowments for the Arts grants impact individuals and communities, visit www.arts.gov.